Good morning, everyone. My name is Phil Brooks. I am the Director of STEM Workforce Partnerships at the University City Science Center. Welcome to this really important conversation, lab commercial cleaning. This is our focus group to really dive into some of the questions that's been asked, at least from what I've been hearing over the past 6 to 7 to 8 months, about what kind of skills and specific strategies are necessary to get Philadelphia residents within the life science kind of STEM field within the space, the growing economy and industry within the city of Philadelphia. Felicia Jones, who is our program coordinator, will be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, definitely feel free to put that information in there. If you definitely want to have, open conversation, which we strongly encourage folks to do, please feel free to unmute yourself as we come across specific questions. Again, lab commercial cleaning, really important topic. And then we ask for folks, if you're not speaking, to keep your audio for your Zoom function on mute. I'm going to now share my screen just so we can get started. Again, general introduction. Welcome to the focus group, Lab Commercial Cleaning. Today is Wednesday, November 3rd, 2021. Here's our agenda for today. We're going to get into some general introductions. We're going to talk about the purpose of the focus group, kind of like the why we're here. Again, we absolutely want to dive into some of the serious questions. We want this section of the agenda, or the time we have together, to be an open dialogue. We're going to talk about some of the gaps, what's missing, what questions did we not ask, what things are necessary in order to get the correct answers or the really, really strong answers for this conversation. Usually you see next steps on the agenda. We're going to get into some logical next steps. What can we do with this information moving forward? And then we're going to wrap things up with a thank you and closing. With that said, we're going to transition into some general introductions. And I did not get a chance to look at the list, but I hope Tiffany Wilson is on the call. Tiff Wilson is our president and CEO of the University City Science Center. Tiff, myself, and several others had this conversation 8, maybe 9 months ago, really about, what does this mean, one, for the Science Center? So Tiff, if you don't mind just giving a general introduction of yourself, kind of your role at the Science Center, and why this specific topic we're talking about today is important for our organization.
Yeah, thanks, Phil, and thanks everybody for joining. So I joined the Science Center as president and CEO last October. So it's been a year and a month. And I recently relocated to Philadelphia from Atlanta. I've got a long background in kind of med tech startups, and that has expanded into kind of general innovation, entrepreneurship, workforce development in kind of entrepreneurial innovation, life sciences, technology ecosystems. I was thrilled and inspired by the workforce development program at the Science Center, and how it has the potential, or how it's complementing our other pillars around commercialization and seeing where startups grow and thrive in the Philadelphia region. And really thinking about, the role of the Science Center in the community in West Philadelphia, and what our role is in this ecosystem to really complement the growth, and started to think and have the conversation with Phil and the team, consistent with our broad cultivate pillar and firsthand, and thinking about middle school and high school students, but recognizing that not everybody is going to be a scientist, and the thriving life sciences and healthcare technology. Thinking about how we provide those opportunities and bring together ancillary businesses and support that provides opportunities for all companies and innovators and entrepreneurs in the region.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tiff, for that introduction. We have a lot of work to do, I think, just from the standpoint of wanting to build more economic development within the city of Philadelphia. I'm very selfish. I love Philadelphia wholeheartedly, and the work that we're doing is leading towards more opportunities for folks. So thank you for that introduction, Tiff. I'd like to transition now over to Claire Marazzo Greenwood, Executive Director and Senior Vice President of Economic Competitiveness for the Chamber of Commerce CEO Council for Growth. I practice that a lot. Claire, Claire, if you don't mind just doing a brief introduction of yourself, kind of life sciences initiatives and kind of programs within the Chamber, but more importantly, kind of like with this conversation on deck, why is this important for the CEO Council?
Great. Thanks, Phil, and thanks for having me this morning, and for those that we've been working with. Appreciate your continued engagement in this work. So as Phil said, I'm Executive Director of the Chamber's CEO Council for Growth, and manage our kind of economic competitiveness work here at the Chamber, which has included over the last several years a lot of work in the life sciences space, but in particular around our position as a hub of cell and gene therapy, and how we can leverage our competitive advantages in that space for broader economic growth and opportunities in the community. We've sort of looked at that through four areas of work. One has been around just really telling that story, so making sure that we're not the only ones that know that strength, and building a shared set of tools and messages that anyone can use to kind of perpetuate our strengths in that space. The second, which we early on in the work partnered with Pidc around, was really to think about what kind of critical infrastructure and facilities are needed to accelerate the growth in the sector. And we've seen a lot of change over the last 3 years in that area alone. Third space is really the ecosystem in general, but I think most important to the conversation today is to focus on talent and workforce as a key component of the potential growth and acceleration of growth, both of the region and of the sector. And we're sort of seeing that through a number of lenses, both, and Phil will talk about this, I think, in our work we've done together with the Science Center and University City District a couple years ago, to really just get a picture of the current and future needs, which we will be, I think, collaborating on updating in the next several months. So we'll get a fresh picture, but also to bring together folks who are really driving demand in that space. So we have a group, the Life Sciences Talent Pipeline Collaborative, of about 20 companies, cell and gene therapy companies, who are really helping to drive what actions we should take to really solve for workforce needs. So there's a lot that I think relates to our conversation this morning, and I'm excited to keep building the concentric circles of opportunity and collaboration in the community. So thanks, Phil, for a few minutes to just say hi.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction. Thank you for mentioning that specific talent needs assessment. I'll be talking about it a little bit more in the presentation a little bit later. But thank you for being here for sure. I appreciate you very much. We are going to transition now to Donna Ali, who is who is the president of Team Clean. Donna and I have had lots of conversation. Felicia and I have had lots of conversations with the management team of Team Clean. Donna, same thing. Please, just general introduction to who you are, what Team Clean is. That whole history still just fascinates me a lot. Yeah. And then more specifically, based off our conversations that we've had so far, why is this important for Team Clean? Why is this something that is a relevant conversation for your company today?
Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone for putting on this focus study. I mean, we really needed to get information on life sciences and how they run their facilities, pretty much. So I'm president of Team Clean. We're located in West Philadelphia. We've been in business for 40 years, and most of my management team is on this call, by the way. A lot of us are represented on this call. And so some years ago, maybe about a year ago, we were called in to clean a facility. And we put our bid in, but then we got turned down because they said that we did not have experience in cleaning lab or cleaning a lab or any experience in the cleaning life science building. And so, you know, the year went on and we started searching around trying to find a certification program or try to get information on what we could do to lift that barrier to entry. And so that's when I came to you guys at the Science Center and asked if you could help. And so that's our story.
Awesome. And that story is ultra extended. I definitely will lean back on you for some upcoming slides, specifically talking a little bit more into kind of like the 40-year history, the 700 plus folks that you've brought on board, folks from different education levels, kind of bringing on board and connecting them with jobs and opportunities. I'm excited. I would love to talk about this. I can go on the road with Team Clean's story, but I definitely want to save that for a little bit later on in the presentation. Melina Blees, site director at Biolabs. Melina and I have been talking for the past 2 years about multiple topics, but more importantly, Melina Blees has been like an incredible champion of the work that we're doing, specifically with the workforce development work we're doing at the Science Center. Melina, can you just give a brief introduction of yourself, Biolabs, and kind of like why this conversation is important to you?
Sure, thank you, Phil. I'm Melina, I'm site director for Biolabs at CIC Philadelphia. We are a national company. So Biolabs is a national company that runs laboratory co-working spaces in about 10 ecosystems currently. We're about to launch 2 in Europe as well. In Philadelphia, 3 years ago, we launched a site, Biolabs at CIC Philadelphia, in partnership with CIC and with the Science Center. And we've, got 200 scientists working on site from lots of different companies, many of whom are represented here. So yeah, I've been really excited to work with Phil and to work with the workforce development team sort of as much as I'm able to. I think they're doing absolutely incredible work. This conversation started a while back when Phil came to me and said, hey, he'd been working on it and said, hey, what are you seeing in terms of demand? One of the things that I run is a lab manager's community call on a monthly basis for just both our residents, but also, other members of the community. And one of the recurring needs that comes up is experienced, skilled lab cleaning. So we're also kind of approaching this both from the workforce development side, but also from just the demand side. This is a gap in the market. This is a need that needs to be filled with, a great company with great talent. And it also serves as an amazing kind of talent pipeline for the life sciences industry. So I think we have some of our partners from the CIC team here. So CIC has decided they want to develop their own labs program. So Biolabs is actually in transition out of the 3675 site in about a week and a half now. So we're going to be in the cloud for a little while until we figure out what our next location is in Philadelphia. But the lab managers community call and this project, I hope to continue to be involved in the interim. So.
Thank you so much. That is incredible. And again, a lot of this conversation, and I remember the day, it was May 4th, because that was Star Wars Day, gathered a lot of the lab managers to kind of have this conversation and really kind of pick their brains about some of the things that are necessary to transition into that space. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more during this conversation, but I do have a few more things to set the tone for the conversation. So thank you, Tiffany, Claire, Donna, and Melina for your introductions. Definitely appreciate it. I hope folks are taking a lot out of this conversation so far. So the purpose of this focus group, really, we wanted to identify some of the key challenges, as Melina mentioned, as Claire mentioned, as everyone mentioned in their introduction, some of the important reasons why this conversation specifically has taken place surrounding lab commercial cleaning. And really, I wanted to set the tone with this really fun slide to kind of like identify, what Philadelphians identify themselves as Philadelphians go abroad in the country, as they go to different states. One of many, these are just 4, but one of many of the things that they identified them as Philadelphians are on the slide. They're really like gung-ho sports teams fans. Philadelphia cuisine is identified as something I went abroad to Massachusetts and people were talking about hoagies and cheesesteaks. I was like, I don't have that stuff on me, but it's in Philadelphia. A lot of other people really identify themselves with the neighborhoods that they live in, the historical significance of Philadelphia. And I really wanted to set the tone with this slide specifically because it's my belief, it's my kind of, personal dream that Philadelphia is identified as the city whose companies are really investing in the community in very strategic and meaningful ways. And that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. But my definition really is to be able to go beyond just having kind of like table conversations and really engaging, using information like we will be doing today to really engage with individuals and grow economic development, grow economic prosperity, not only for the return on investment for those companies, but for the benefit of Philadelphia residents at varying education levels so they can have amazing wages, great lifestyles, food for their family, all of the above. So eventually I would love for Philadelphia to be identified as that city that really does this really well. So, the Bostons of the world, California's, the Research Triangle Parks will come here and say, hey, Philadelphia, how are you doing this? We've identified you as this really strong city doing this really amazing work within the life science industry. What's your secret? And I'd love for that conversation to start here / continue here and really kind of move forward in a way that's very meaningful for everyone involved. Claire mentioned this really briefly in her introduction. In partnership with a whole bunch of folks, we produced Cell and Gene Therapy and Connected Health Needs Assessment Study, eConsult Solutions, Chamber of Commerce, CEO Council for Growth, and University City District's West Philadelphia Skills Initiative all collaborated on a predictive study. We brought focus groups together from higher education, from the industry, from nonprofits, city government, and we came out with a lot of predictions in relation to this. If folks are really interested in reading this really long document, it has a lot of predictions, but a lot of like really good key findings in relation to what's happening in talent needs assessments over the next 3 to 5 years. I strongly encourage you to check it out. What we'll try to do is we'll assemble kind of like a follow-up email with this information. But one thing I definitely want to focus a little bit more on is this bar graph in the center. And at the bottom, you see the dark gray and the gray. This is really a representation of the increase and decrease of master's, BS, PhD, and medical degree holders within companies. They are incredibly critical to the process and the development of companies as they plant their flag here in Philadelphia. We know that. I want to skip the red for a moment and jump to the light gray. Another very important aspect of the growth of potential individuals within this space is manufacturing. So this is going up, like this is not going down, this is going up. As companies continue to grow, manufacturing space, manufacturing workers, again, will be critical to the benefit of the company in question. And the last kind of thing I want to focus on is in the red, which is business operation roles. So we're talking about accounting, executive assistants, marketing teams, anything you name, anything you can think of that's a non-scientific role includes business operation roles. This also includes the focus of our conversation today with lab commercial cleaning. So I just want to keep that in mind as we're having these discussions. Again, this is a predictive study that we did with everyone involved, the partners that I mentioned, but really that business operation role is the thing that we want to focus on wholeheartedly. One, because it doesn't require necessarily a 4-year degree. It can include 4-year degree holders, but we also want to make sure that bridge that we're building for community, for people who are looking for work, is as not easy, but still reachable as possible, really lowering some of the barriers that we have in place currently to make sure folks are equipped and connected to career opportunities within this industry. So with all that said, I'm gonna like kind of move from talking a little bit and really start to kind of encourage folks to ask questions and really dive deep into this. So the next slide is directed towards some of the folks in companies, but I absolutely want to give kind of like the mic over to the management team at Team Clean. I know these specific questions came from them. I'm sure they have more questions too, but for this first slide, we really want to kind of like think about what this means. So some of the questions that you see right now: do you see outsourcing as monetary cost savings? Have you seen any career paths for individuals who do this type of cleaning? If this is specialized cleaning, have you seen companies pay a premium for this type of service? So our RSVP had, a lot of folks from companies. Please feel free to unmute yourself. Felicia Jones, again, our program coordinator, will be monitoring the chat. But I also want to hand it over to the folks, the management team at Team Clean, to expand upon some of these questions so we can start to record some of the answers from our guests on the call today. So Donna or Kwesi, or please.
Yeah. Yep. So let me speak up first. There's a lot of noise outside my office, so I hope everyone can hear me okay.
You're good. Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay. So oftentimes, facilities, they will, self-perform, and then oftentimes they, put the cleaning out for bid. And so our thinking behind this is that in these labs, do most companies prefer, or do they see it as a cost savings to outsource it? Maybe not so monetary, but is it more of a headache for you to self-perform these type of services, or, or not? That was the end of my question.
Gotcha. Yeah. Anyone from any companies? Is that? I mean, the question makes sense to me. Is anyone representing any companies want to respond?
Yeah. I know from Cabaletta, one of the big issues, honestly, actually isn't monetary at this point. I mean, it is. We do care about the cost, but we definitely care about finding somebody who actually does the smaller areas. I know we've talked to a couple cleaning companies who basically shot us down when they found out we only had about 4,000 square feet worth of lab space. And they were kind of like, no, that's not what we're looking for. So definitely finding somebody who will do the smaller, one-off companies was important. And I know that we're very soon going to be essentially doubling our space, which is going to put a pretty big restraint on our ability to clean everything ourselves, in our smaller group.
Right. And I know just hearing in conversation, having lots of conversations with lots of folks, I know that larger commercial lab cleaning services will book, I guess, what's the terminology? We'll write up contracts for larger kind of life science companies. And you hit the nail on the head of something that we were talking about before, where it would be really advantageous to have a part-time person in, or have someone in that can do or clean that square footage and not shoot you down, right? So that's part of why we're having this conversation. Other folks from other companies?
Hey everyone, my name's Drew Kimberlin. I work under Melina at Biolabs. I'm a lab operations associate, so I'm actually in the position that's cleaning our labs right now. Especially as of recently, it's difficult to find the time to do something that is not necessarily could be a full-time employee's job, but I absolutely see the need in the way of it would take the headache out of trying to find the time to clean these spaces and get really detailed. It's kind of almost becomes a special project that you have to set time aside for. I can't speak to the monetary side of things. I'm not in budgeting in our company, but I do see how it could be beneficial because time is limited, and we only have so much of it, right?
Right, absolutely. And that's a good, not even segue, but that's a good kind of point to highlight throughout our conversation, with the intention of saying, the roles that folks have currently are really important. You're spending more time kind of like doing, so my wife is in restaurants and she does the cooking, she does all that stuff, but it takes an equal amount of time to like wash all of the dishes, make sure everything is clean for the next round. I'm just making that comparison because that's what I have at my fingertips. But at the same time, you know, if it's me and the kids washing the dishes, she can focus on, you know, the next thing, the next cooking, et cetera. I'm just making that connection just because that's, you know, what I have forefront in my mind. But
Can I just say one more thing? I just want to ask that, so many years ago, there was I can't think of the name of the company, but they were out in Springhouse, Pennsylvania, and they called us to do their tablet press cleaning. And and so we, had to get like special, be trained in that type of cleaning. So I don't understand exactly what this lab cleaning, what does it consist? What do you do in there? Are you cleaning, tablet presses or, those like chemistry vials or something like that? Could someone explain that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can explain from my side of things, since I was just explaining. I'm almost literally just cleaning the lab benches, cleaning behind the sinks, very much the way you'd clean a house, like, taking care of spills, dusting and trying to get equipment just cleaned off. And I think maybe the barrier to entry there is just the familiarity with the equipment and the hazards that I'm cleaning around. A lot of the work that I'm doing cleaning wise is not specialized in any way. I don't think that we would necessarily be interested in outsourcing like the actual cleaning of equipment and things, but the cleaning around and the lab space and just keeping it tidy. And yeah, like I said, the barrier to entry is really just the knowledge of hazards and kind of like safety training and knowing, like, kind of being aware, okay, this thing is running, we need to not touch that experiment at this time and maybe clean that later on kind of idea.
That's actually the same for us from, also, sorry, my name is Leah DeRosa from Cavaletta Bio, the lab manager there. I would say that's pretty similar to kind of our needs as well. We would take care of, specialized equipment, deep cleanings, weekly cleanings and stuff like that. But general like bench cleaning, I guess, depending, cleaning reagent making, floors, walls, like that kind of stuff, that, we'll do, like Drew said, we'll go through and we'll do parts, and we'll clean as we go, but over time it does build up, and then one day you're spending a whole day cleaning the lab. So yeah, it would be a lot of like room, large scale cleaning, biological hazards and all that stuff. We would make a point to have away on purpose.
And so, I mean, I think this is a question for one of the other slides, but we're talking about it now. Is that specific training available just for folks that like have degrees, or can this be taught to anyone on any education level?
From my side, it would be any level. I mean, obviously, like I guess depending, maybe like a high school diploma. So, I would assume, but just because then they'd be like 18 and ready to work. Yeah, but no, technically, a lot of the training, biological safety training and stuff like that are, couple-hour courses that are currently led by a company called Triumvirate through CIC. But we could also easily facilitate like hands-on chemical training of kind of, stuff to avoid, et cetera.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think like the places you would start looking for that kind of training to be developed, at Biolabs, we deal with Triumvirate as well, and they're kind of our EH&S consultant. But any environmental hazards and safety company would be able to construct a course for you and work with you on that to educate your employees. And then they kind of give you their stamp, which is, I think, what you're looking for, of like, yes, we've trained these employees to know what biological hazards are, and we deem them safe to be in a lab kind of idea.
Gotcha.
Yep. Melina, hopping back in here too, I think one of the issues that we have with, typically this is contracted out to whatever a building's janitorial contract is. But one of the issues is that a lot of times there's a fairly high turnover, or there's different folks working the floor different days, and you don't necessarily have training for each of those people. And there's not kind of consistent reliability of making sure that the same person's going to be there and that they've been trained and they've been specialist trained. They're not necessarily a full-time employee for these smaller spaces, but they really do need to be kind of dedicated folks.
Hey, everybody, if I could just say a couple of words, Phil. So one of the things, Felicia Jones from the Science Center, one of the things that we teach and we explain to in our bulk cohort is the opportunity when it comes to cleaning a lab. And me and Philip, all of us have talked about this at one point. It's really knowing your way around certain experiments. Like Andrew said, what to touch, what not to touch, because you have a work that's being done. And sometimes this is weeks and months worth of work. And so you don't want to have a situation where it's being cleaned or discarded because of the lack of knowledge, of not knowing exactly what it is. So I think a lot of it has to do specifically maybe with the company's specific type of work or experimenting that's going on within the lab, and also how to, I guess, maybe train in specific areas on what they're actually doing so that it doesn't get just discarded or thrown away or damaged, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's go ahead. Nope, go ahead.
So Felicia, that would be more like on the job training then. That wouldn't be any type of, class that you could prepare people for a week ahead of time. That would be more OJ, on the job training.
Look, I think it would be a little bit of both, simply because it all depends. There's so many different components in the health sciences and in the lab setting. It's different types of experiments, different types of work that's being done. So it might be something where there are valves set up or different solutions set up. So I think it's a combination of both, having that general familiarness of just the health sciences in general and what exactly is going on in a workspace, plus specific training from that actual workspace, because everybody has something a little bit different going on. Of course, there's going to be general practices that everybody needs to know and should know, but there also needs to be, like you said, on the job training regarding what specifically is going on in what particular lab.
And that, yep, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to jump in, I think that a company would be happy, especially when they're signing a contract with you, would be happy to say, these are the things that we're doing specifically that you need to look out for. But yeah, you could prepare a class where you give a brief overview of, this is what a gel tank looks like, this is what this looks like, and these are the things that you should just be looking out for.
So what about this second quote? So let me pause for a moment. I think we're going in a really good direction. We've touched a little bit about risk management. We touched a little bit about kind of potential certifications or potential opportunities to get into this space. What about this second question specifically? Have folks, and specifically towards companies, and if you haven't said anything, please feel free to speak up. Have you seen any career paths, so like legitimate career paths for individuals who do this type of cleaning?
I worked at GSK out of college, and there was a company that did the cleaning for us. And the folks that did the cleaning were full-time employees who were trained on different, chemical and biological safety hazards. And I mean, it was a full 40-hour-a-week job, health benefits and all that good stuff. So it is definitely possible. I'm blanking on what the company was now. Sure. I wasn't, they were already set up when I was there. But this was full scale, manufacturing, so clean room cleaning. So ideally you would have people in a career who, know this stuff and continue to do this. So that you don't have a very high turnover rate. So I know it's definitely possible. They do exist for long-term employment.
Yeah.
If I could add, this is John Ford from Team Clean. My past experience with cleaning, like clean rooms and labs, you need to develop a real mentality It, it has to be a germ-free environment. So PPE is required, and then you have to be willing to be in like a repetitive rotating state where you're constantly going over things and cleaning things and keeping the whole lab environment clean.
Yeah, thank you for that addition too. I know some of the, not some, if not most, but most of the tasks within a lab environment are repetitive. And in conversations I've had with, multiple folks, and being in the lab myself for multiple years in school, a lot of it just became second nature. Like I can do cell culture with in the back of my hand. I can do ELISA assays. I could do gel electrophoresis. I could do Western blot analysis tests like a black in my hand because it was just repetitive. With that in mind, with kind of like certain techniques, are there techniques more desired than others if we were to set something up where we have folks coming into the lab to clean a space? Or would it be kind of like connected to our conversation already where we're saying, okay, if you're going to clean around certain equipment, here's what you need to know. This piece of equipment, stay away from because we're running an experiment. Otherwise, here are all the other things that should be cleaned, in terms of signing a contract and getting folks up to speed on what to do, what not to do. Are there specific skills desired over others that would be more advantageous to a company, whether it's small, medium size, or large?
So from our smaller companies and honestly, no, a lot of it would be kind of, hey, by the way, here's things to avoid. I know one thing we do internally, even regardless of cleaning, is hang signs on things, if experiments are crucial and doors can't be opened and stuff like that. So I think it really does wind up being kind of case by case basis, at least for us on a smaller scale. The more experience you gain at these smaller companies, you probably would see like a better chance of getting a job at a place like GSK or something like that with the experience under your belt. But I don't think a super additional, like super specific training would actually help Cabaletta.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm also curious to hear what folks think about. I mean, I think there's piece number one, which is kind of general cleaning within a lab's environment, which is something we see a huge need for, that, comes with some training and also comes with, I think, some screening on the vendor's part for kind of their most detail-oriented kind of, consistent, cautious team members to be in that environment, right? Which is, again, something that you're really looking for in those lab environments, the kind of person who is going to read the sign that says, don't put anything here. But then there's also the separate question, which is, are these companies looking also for potentially, if they have a good relationship with the company, more detailed cleaning? Are you looking to train and have somebody do, for instance, BSC cleaning or freezer de-icing and things like that? And is that something that we see appeal? Is there appeal to these companies for that? But also, does that become kind of a job path also that kind of puts people on the path if they're interested in becoming a lab tech or something like that down the line? Is that an opportunity to kind of gain experience in the lab, get network, right? And sort of head in the science direction as well. So curious to kind of hear what folks think about the more sort of technical side of cleaning as well, if it was an opportunity.
We would absolutely say yes to that. I think the extra help throughout the labs would be appreciated all around. And like you said, it is a good stepping stone for learning different like aseptic techniques and stuff like that.
Hi, this is Lois at Cameron Bio. And yeah, I just want to echo what Leah was saying. We definitely have a need for that sort of more technical cleaning, with BSCs and maybe biohazard liquid waste and those sorts of things. And typically that's something that you might see a lab tech do. We don't necessarily have the staffing to allocate specifically for a lab tech at our size. So I think if there was that capacity capacity at a cleaning company, it would be definitely something that we would consider utilizing.
Mm.
This is Kwesi and Palmer from Team Clean on their management team. I have a question about what Ms. Lois just said. In terms of a lab tech and somebody that encounters that biohazard waste that you're talking about, what certifications would you be looking for in a cleaning company if we do have biohazard technicians?
That's a good question. I don't know if there's necessarily a specific certification, but if there was proof of a training, like for example, when we have new team members come on board at Biolabs, Biolabs provides, a lab safety training schedule for them. So if there was or an organization or a company that you could contact that could do just like a basic biohazard safety training, I think something like that would be enough, at least for me. I don't know how other people feel about that.
Yeah, I love that response. I love that question. And that's definitely a part of the next set of questions, I believe. Yep. And yeah, I'd love to dig into this question specifically, because I can say with not full confidence, because I'm not in this space, but for like the manufacturing space, an OSHA 10 certification and a program called MCAT just wrapped up their graduation not too long ago. Keena Sears-Brown, who oversees this program, talked about how the participants got an OSHA 10 certification. So that's a recognized certification in manufacturing, right? I think, when Melina and I were doing some research, we we're kind of like going to different cities to see if there was an actual certification or some type of 21st century skill needed for this. And Melina, correct me if I'm wrong, we came up empty-handed for the reason of this not being something that's focused on as much. But I'm hoping, again, with this conversation in the focus group, we can start to answer some of those questions, or at least identify some of the challenge. So folks who are willing in this conversation, in this group, we can have kind of like further discussion and potentially use this information to put something together that can be recognized by whomever. So like, please, like, continue. Let's continue to have this conversation. But let me finish this. What are some 21st century skills individuals can learn to be certified in a lab space? Is there a nationally, statewide, or local certification process? What are your specific companies' standards and practices in cleaning a lab space? Is lab cleaning across multiple companies the same, or are there nuances? And we did touch on this a little bit more, but I'd like to dive a little bit deeper into these two questions.
Well, there's definitely going to be some nuances. I would say, depending, most of us that follow like BSL rules are following pretty similar rules. I think you're going to get a lot of the nuances are going to be with what cleaning products people use. So I've seen companies flip-flop. For example, my old company, weekly cleaning was Vestine and Lokine, and they would alternate between those on a weekly basis. My current company is a lot smaller. We have a lot less biological hazards. We use Cavicide on a weekly basis. However, the cleaning process is exactly the same. You start with your sporicide, you let it sit for X minutes, and then you clean it up with some type of alcohol. We personally use IPA. Some folks use ethanol. But I think I'm sure it'll change. But from my understanding, most of the cleaning processes are pretty similar. It's the chemicals that you use, which is really dependent upon what hazards you have in your company. Will kind of dictate the chemicals. But even across multiple jobs, even when I was at GSK, I was the same cleaning, but they use Spore Cleanse instead of any of the other ones I mentioned. But the process was exactly the same. So.
And I don't mean to keep talking because I want other folks to talk. to talk, but and that's something that I've come across multiple times. You know, I've mentioned that I was in a lab before. This is a long time ago, but also just in my general conversation and in touring labs and things of that nature, a lot of the processes are exactly the same. I physically did not have to be at school to learn those processes. You know, if I had the ability to go into kind of like a lab setting or had, and I know like people are strapped for like human capital, but if we're potentially thinking about bringing a higher education institution on board to do some type of training related to this that has a connection with industry, or having an instructor from industry do this type of training, I think that would be the most direct route. I know there's challenges. I'm absolutely aware there's challenges with both of those situations. But I think in terms of kind of like the processes and nuances in between companies, that's kind of like what we found, and kind of like the basis of how we built our kind of like workforce program. Well, we're training adult learners in basic lab skills, but we're focusing, if you remember, on that bar graph in the middle with the business operation roles. So still hashing away at these two specific questions. And thank you for that response. The response is perfect, I think. Do others have kind of additions to that question, additional responses to these two questions on the screen right now?
Yes, I have one more question.
Sorry.
I'm sorry, was
No,
anybody talking?
please go.
So in terms of the nuances with the cleaning, for any biohazard waste, are you expecting the vendor to safely dispose of these with a biohazard disposal company, or would that be remediated with the lab itself in terms of that disposal?
So currently, Melina, I'm actually not sure. I believe Triumvirate is in charge of the biological waste as well, removal. So currently the company, up to the company to package the bio waste, bring it to the trash room, and then as Melina confirmed, Triumvirate then does the actual waste removal. So it would be up to the cleaning company to make sure the materials were put in the right box, but personally, Cavaletta would right now handle disposal of the trash through Triumvirate.
Thank you.
I just have, Team Clean is certified with the American Bio Association. And I'm just wondering if any of the end users on this call are familiar with the American Bio Association, and if that's is that like a something that the end users would be interested in, having the companies be certified with industry like American Bio Association? I'm sorry, an organization like American Bio Association.
This is Alan Riddick. I can speak on behalf of Drexel and pretty much large organizations. Donna, a certification lets an entity know that your particular business, and it's the same way through a diverse business certification. It lets large organizations know that in a particular area or criteria, your business has been through a particular process, either has been audited or has a standard best practice on handling things. So I would say that's definitely good information to share and bring to the table.
Thank you, Alan. And hello, Alan.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you very much for that.
Hey, Phil, there's a few questions in the chat regarding wages. I wanted to, there is, Sonia asked if the specialized cleaning, if there is a premium for the company and for the worker. And Sam said they'd love to know the wages associated with these type of jobs. And Sonia also asked, what is the entry level wages for these lab cleaning jobs? Curious if the wages help explain the turnover issues previously mentioned.
So for our companies on the call and folks who have not said too much, when there are contracts made, is that a focus of those contracts? Is the the wage of the individual coming into the lab kind of identified? Do we, for the folks who are on the call, do you have that information? Do you know if that is something that's available to you in your role? Or if these like questions make sense? I'm interpreting it as, you know, if we're bringing someone in a lab space, we don't want to just pay them $10 an hour. We want to be able to compensate them in a way that's meaningful. So I'll stop there.
I mean, I personally would not know, being lab manager, but I know our HR department is very focused on making sure like that pay is equal and across the board, you know, regardless of any type of like physical appearance, as well as making sure that it's at least in line with like what common pay is for that position. I know we've been really focused over the last year or so, being a smaller startup, making sure that folks are being paid, you know, not only a living wage, but representative of the work that they do, and dealing with biological hazards, you know, automatically, in our opinion, means an increase in pay, because it's you're putting your health at risk, just like anybody else working in a lab. So it should be accommodated in your pay.
That could actually be a really good question. There's a monthly group that was started by the team in Integral Molecular, that's biotech HR professionals. So Phil, remind me, and we can bring that question to that group as well.
Yep.
It's also important.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay. It's also important too, with respect to wages, entry-level wages, incumbent wages, is how transparent you are at the hiring process of what those wages are. So I'm curious how employers respond to that level of transparency for prospective candidates. I'm Sanaye Mohammed with Drexel.
Hey, Sanaye. Responses?
Somebody said there was a question.
Yeah. Do we have
regarding integral?
Oh, sorry. Not a question. I was saying they started an HR professionals group, and that would be a good group to bring pay questions to.
Do we have the HR?
Yes.
Folks? Here we go.
Well, I am not actually, good morning. My name is Soji, and I'm actually with Integral Molecular, but I'm not part of the HR group or team. I'm actually part of the operations. I'm the new operations manager. So we're essentially, you know, we're growing as a company. So they're hiring and we're developing a new structure. And I was brought in as the operations manager, which entails, you know, facilities and cleaning and things like that. That's why I'm here at the meeting today. That's why I was curious when you said Integral Molecular. I was like, oh, okay, that's me. So I missed it. I didn't see if there was a question there. But as far as those things are concerned, I'm still learning. I've been here for about 30 days or so. So I'm just still trying to figure out exactly what it is that we can offer to everyone else, and what exactly people can offer for us as far as cleaning is concerned, and what essentially what all of that looks like and what it entails.
Yeah, and I know I have lots of conversations with Adeton, who's a hiring manager over at Integral Molecular.
That's my sister.
Stop it. Okay, we're recording. Sorry. we'll talk later. Okay, great. Excellent. So, I mean, are there any like direct questions? Are there any other like HR folks on the call to answer Sanaye's question? Because I also personally think that's really important as well. You know, folks are going out, not on a limb, but folks are kind of like marketing themselves and you know, putting themselves out there. They want to make sure that if they are doing something, that they're safe. If they are doing something that it's kind of like worth their time. Any responses to that from the group that's on the call now? And if we haven't heard from you, we would love to hear from you, even if it's not in direct response to this question.
Phil, not necessarily a response, but an offer to pose that same question to the Talent Pipeline Collaborative Group as well. So that's, you know, if we kind of gather some of these things we want to follow up with, you know, other colleagues from these organizations that may not be on the call today, we can certainly be a channel for that continued conversation and information gathering as well.
So for Melina and for Claire, another question to put to the group that you have is with respect to these certifications and trainings that an individual might have to enter into these career paths, how is it they could acquire those credentials all separate from employment, right? So can I walk up as an individual and get an OSHA 10 certification? Do I need to be employed with an employer who will then pay for said training? Like, how does all of that work, right? So I think it's critically important for going to require that type of credential, even if it's open at lower educational attainments beyond, below a 4-year college degree, is to understand and communicate to prospective workers how best to obtain those credentials, and then recognize that it could be a barrier to entry if that prospective employer or employee rather doesn't have that certification, and the only way you can get it is if you're employed with an entity who will provide that certification, right? That catch-22 could certainly exist. So I'm curious about that because I don't know, this is not my space, in terms of how talent procures those types of credentials. Yeah.
So this is Donna again. So we pay for all of the training programs. So if an individual comes to us and they need OSHA training, or they need a certification from the American Bio Association, then what we'll do, we pay for that. And most employers will pay for that.
And so I guess my question back to you, Donna, and to others as well on the call, is that if Sanae doesn't have that credential, but you're
You're on mute.
sorry, my Alexa reminder just went off. I'm super sorry. Yeah, so Donna, I guess my question to you and to others, right, is as an individual, for a prospective employee, you're not requiring I have that certification in order to join training on the job, right? And so that credential is not a barrier, but it is a must-have while in the course of employment with, say, team cleanup, correct?
Exactly. And
that's what I thought. I just wanted to confirm. Yeah. So thanks.
So, you know, Phil, I just want to understand if we can get this question answered. So when we go to a new facility that maybe opened up on a Navy Yard or somewhere, and so we go to say, you know, we're interested in cleaning your lab or your facility, what would make them say yes to us? Is it strictly that you've done it, you know, you've had 5 years experience cleaning GSK, or, you know, or you have a certification from the American Bio Association? What would make them say no or yes?
I can't see our list because I'm sharing my screen, but if we have if AJ, you're on here from PIDC, or if anyone from Iovance, or if anyone can respond to that kind of question. And I mean, we don't want to pull punches. We don't want to sugarcoat anything. The purpose of the focus group is to get some of these questions answered. And I think Donna's question is a very serious, legitimate one. You know, what are the things that a company will say no to? Hey, you don't have this experience, or yes, like multiple, many of your folks have had aseptic technique training, so we want to bring you on board to do this. What are some of those things that will differentiate, you know, a company from saying yes or no to a bid or the construction of a contract? Not construction, but the development of a contract.
Hey, Phil. Someone's, go ahead, Taylor, you got it, I'll go after.
Thank you. Okay. I'm Taylor, lab manager here at Interius. We're over at the Pennovation site. So for us, we're looking for, you know, lab cleaning or a team that comes every time. Like, I want to see the same person and know that the same person is coming to clean our lab, because that's huge. Because once I build that relationship, if there's something that makes that person feel uncomfortable, or they have questions, like they have my cell phone, or you know, I'd be willing to provide training, you know, through Interius with, you know, DOT or hazardous materials. But for us, we're not really looking for that. We're looking for, you know, clean the floors, maybe dust the top of the equipment, and that's it. But I gotta say, like, one of the, you know, red flags is, you know, if like we've had before where we had a cleaning person come in and dripping in sweat, just completely overworked and underpaid. And, you know, we don't want to support that. So if we know that the company takes care of their employees and we can build relationship, like that's a huge go for us.
Thank you.
Phil, this is AJ with PIDC, and yeah, I echo everything Taylor said. As I'm, you know, working with companies down at the Navy, are just understanding the space, how the contracts work for this commercial cleaning. I'm hearing the same thing in terms of working with a reputable company, whatever that means, right? Those certifications that are needed to have workers come in. But then also I'm starting to learn about how this contract works, right? And it's not like typical like cleaning services with buildings where it's bidded out, right? It's usually that that cleaning company or that provider kind of recognition, right? It's not this open public bid that's happening, and that's just from information that I'm gathering. So I don't know what the inroads are for cleaning companies right now, and I'm very early on in gathering information in this process. But it is a question, you know, how does Donna make an inroad with some of these companies if, right, that public bid isn't there for her to compete for?
Because what I'm seeing, AJ, is that a lot of the, you know, the big firms, and I'm not trying to call out, but, you know, like the ABMs of the world and the, you know, Sodexos, or, you know, those firms that, I mean, very large firms. And maybe it's because they can say, well, you know, yeah, I had, you know, lab cleaning experience for 12 years in San Francisco or somewhere like that. So, you know, that makes us look like, you know, they'd rather go with that large firm. Yeah. So.
One thing. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Nope, I was just going to say, Donna, that's just my pulse on it as well. But I think there's a huge market here to support Philadelphia businesses like yours, and that's why we're having this focus group. So we're all learning all this information together, and we're going to solve this puzzle.
Yeah, appreciate it, AJ.
Yeah. I agree with that too. Like, we would genuinely prefer kind of not to be with someone as big as that.
Thank you.
You know, like, because I don't know, I feel like we would kind of get lost in the kerfluffle, you know, being this small, like 4,000 square foot company. Like, I could just see us like being lost in the shuffle and just like being skipped sometimes. And it's when you don't have unfortunately in this day and age, when you don't have that buying power, you know, you do kind of get left behind, and that's going to happen with the big places like that. I would rather, you know, work with someone smaller, and I'm sorry, I forget who said it, but and know the people that are coming in to clean, you know, be able to, you know, form some type of working relationship with them, you know, whether it's a pair of people or like a group of 4 that, you know, kind of alternate, just like actually knowing who's going to be there, and like, you know, making sure that that relationship is fostered.
Absolutely. I think it's also, you know, the biotech community in Philadelphia is still in a lot of ways a small town, and a lot of this happens through word of mouth. There's a local company called Roberts Oxygen that we work with for liquid nitrogen and CO2 and things like that. They're not one of the big guys. They're a really local company, and we've worked with them for years, and all of our residents and a lot of our neighbors have worked with them for years, because word on the street is that they're great service and they're local, and, you know, everybody talks, right? So just providing great quality of service and treating your people well and kind of building up those relationships, I think, at least in Philadelphia, makes a huge difference. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point that you made, Melina. Like, so this nitrogen company, the liquid nitrogen company, like they're well known. Like, if the ideal situation came out of this focus group and we use this data, Donna, I'm just speaking for Team Clean for a moment. I would love for Team Clean to be that company that's known by multiple people in the University City area, multiple folks in the Philadelphia area, where they're talking about, hey, you know, who are we going to get to, you know, do this contract with? oh, we know Team Clean because they have that reputation, all of the above. I'm throwing it, I was throwing like words in your mouth, Donna, but I purposely, had just one kind of like commercial cleaning company, specifically Team Clean, on this call, just because we've done a lot of research, we've talked with them a lot. And we do want to start these conversations off small. I wouldn't want to bring a whole bunch of people into the conversation, which is why we didn't like kind of like plaster it on social media, but getting like the right folks in the room to have this conversation. But I think, again, you make a really good point, Melina, like if we can get Team Clean at that level where folks are recognizing their work, their certifications, all of these things, it would be something that I again, management team, correct me if I'm wrong, would be advantageous to everyone involved.
Hey, Drew from Biolabs again. I think what I'm hearing from this conversation is that it would take just one in, and then the dominoes are going to fall, right? So I think it sounds like you would be trying to find a company like Triumvirate, an EH&S consultant to develop a class with, and maybe a company who's willing to work with you and kind of be that first one that develops this training program to get your people certified. And then from there, like we said, people in Philadelphia talk. So if you can find someone who's willing to work with you on that, and then you get your good experience, I think that's going to go a long way.
And we're happy to be those.
Excellent.
I'm
So
certainly happy. Don't ask me, because you don't even have to ask me that question. I'm very happy. Yes.
So the last two questions that I had on here, and we can move on to the other sides. We've already addressed some of these questions already, but risk management is a universal topic. What concerns do you have that we can address and ideally solve if an individual was properly trained to clean your company's space? And probably the most compelling or the most important question, is there an appetite to free up some of your senior scientists and your lab managers to focus on their projects? And this really just came by way of conversation of saying, a lot of the folks that are already hired on staff at different companies are splitting their time with, saving the world and building out, curing diseases and making sure that all the equipment that they're using to do all of this work is pristine and everything else. So with these, we've answered a lot of these questions already, but if folks have kind of like any other very specific responses to these questions, this is a perfect time. Also, because we're coming up on the end of our time together as well. And again, I want to be respectful of folks' time. I have 11:11. Yeah. Okay. Well, with that said, and maybe a little bit similar to what we just asked in the previous slide, what are some of the things that we haven't talked about? Like, what are some of the holes that we potentially need to plug to round out this focus group, to round out this conversation?
Phil, I have a question. It could be for another working group. Excuse some background noise, but I think one of the questions to answer too, as we think about, these opportunities within the cleaning space, but it's also the job quality. I know we asked the wage question, but then we also wanted to ask, like, at what point does a company think that this is a full-time service, right? Whether that's based off square footage or the number of labs. But I think that's a piece of the puzzle that us in the workforce system are trying to figure out, right? And I think, yeah, I just think it's something that should be asked, and then we'll figure out where it falls in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Others. This also moves us into the logical next steps that I mentioned a little bit earlier on. What could potentially be some logical next steps? We're not, recording this to say like, hey, we're going to come back in say that you said this thing, so you have to commit to do this thing. But what are some potential logical steps? We talked about getting potentially Team Clean in with one company and using that as a domino effect, because biotech community is such a close-knit community. People talk, again, like it's one of those things where it's not what you know, it's who you know. We talked about instructors potentially from a higher education space and or instructors from a company space. We've identified a lot of things in terms of possible certifications, or if the companies are willing and can recognize some of the existing certifications or the institutions that help govern some of those kind of commercial cleaning companies, and recognizing that they already have these certifications and are willing to do a little bit in-house training. We've identified opportunities for employees to be in a space, but really leveraging consistency, not really focusing on, you know, the unpredictability of, you know, one person coming in, not knowing anything, having that consistency, maybe a team of 4 that can rotate, that can have that lab manager's number, call them up and say, hey, this thing is happening, or hey, this thing is exploding, all of the above. We talked about a lot during this call. I would love to hear from folks about what they think, or just, you know, hypothetically, what could be logical next steps. Because I absolutely want to take this information, let it simmer a little bit, and then reach out to a few folks for some follow-ups.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
So with the smaller companies, would there be an interest in like an internship where, you know, a company like Team Clean could have an internship with the company just so that we could get the experience?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and that would be, when I say internship, of course, we you know, we pick up the cost for that employee, just so that we could get, that would be like, you know, a way to get, you know, a way to get our foot in the door, so to speak, or get some kind of experience. So folks don't say, no, you don't have the experience.
Yep.
It's just something.
Cabaletta would be very interested in that. One of our initiatives the past year and a half has been specifically to try and give back more to the community, like locally, and work with local organizations and stuff. So we would be very interested in talking with you about that. I know we've done a couple internships over the past year and a half now, with Philly specifically, just to kind of give back to the community we work in, and some of us live in. So.
It's excellent. Others?
So where are you located? Just curious to know.
We are in the CIC building, so 3675 Market Street.
Oh, you're in the, okay.
Yep, we're in that building.
Do other folks who represent companies, may not be able to speak for their company overall, but think that this might be a possibility?
I think we would have some interest over at Interius in investigating this a little bit more.
Thank you.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Hello, my name is Manette. I'm a Team Clean assistant recruiting. I'm new. Just based on the people that apply for Team Clean, we do get a lot of nurses. We get a lot of college students that have been in biology fields just based on their resumes. And I do feel like we would have a pool of potential employees that would really like the idea.
I think that's a really important fact to highlight, especially with internships, potential for apprenticeships. So thank you for bringing that up. Sorry, did I cut someone else off there that was about to speak? No, okay. So I definitely want to bring kind of like things to a close. Like, thank you for participating in this conversation. There was a lot that there was a lot that was said here, and I also want to be able to take that information and share it back with you. Folks that need to follow up, please definitely follow up. What we'll do at the Science Center, we'll do our best to send this specific recording out to you. So you just have kind of a record of our conversation in our focus group. We mentioned talking about the cell and gene therapy needs assessment study and doing kind of a refresher of that. We absolutely would like for some of you to be a part of that conversation. So it's very possible that we'll reach out to you in relation to that conversation, in relation to talent needs assessment in the region. Does anyone have kind of like any parting thoughts, any words? Was this helpful? Was this crazy? What? Let me just hear folks' thoughts about what they heard today.
Hi, this is Akil Savoard, Team Clean. Excellent session. Taking a lot of notes, and we just look to follow up quickly with all the offers that have been put out there, and hopefully this can become a model, industry model with respect to the small business development initiatives that the center is championing right now. Thank you.
Excellent. Others, before we wrap it up and give you back 11 minutes.
I just wanted to say it's very exciting. It seems pretty new, so we're excited to be a part of something that's expanding, and hopefully we can build good working relationships and create jobs for good people.
Well said. All right, going once, going twice.
Sam from the city here. I just wanted to wait till the absolute last minute to talk to Phil.
Thanks, Sam.
Really enjoyed this conversation, and as we keep thinking about how we get folks into jobs in the life sciences, this is sort of something that came to us sort of, me at least, out of left field, and I'm really excited to see where we go and get some companies to partner. And you have our full support, whatever you need.
Excellent. So, yep. Somebody stopped me. There we go. I heard somebody. Or was that just background noise? Okay, great. Thank you all for your time. We want to give you 10 minutes back. Again, the contributions to this conversation, really important. As a follow-up, we'll try and get this out to you. Ideally, fingers crossed, before the end of the week. Felicia and I also are doing recruitment and finalization of our program starting next Monday. So there's a lot going on, but thank you to the management of Team Clean. Thank you to everyone who did an introduction, Tiffany, Claire, Donna, and Melina. Thank you to the Biolabs team. Thank you to the folks who spoke up throughout the conversation. Have a great Wednesday, and Felicia, stay on so we can wrap up. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay.